Hello, darlings. Good to see you. Happy Sunday, wherever you are. Although in some parts of the world it may already be past Sunday, in which case, happy Monday. I don't think there's any parts of the world where it's still Saturday, so I'll try not to worry about that too much. Anyway, good to see you. Thank you for joining me. I'm Tad. I'm keeping an eye out. We have a neighbor cat who keeps sneaking into our yard. And I love cats, don't get me wrong. I love animals. I certainly don't want to hurt it, but it's over here stalking our birds. And plus, we have a very large dog who likes, or well, at least would like to eat cats. Although the dog is sealed off by a fence, cats can go over fences, and so for a variety of reasons, I keep peering over the top of my desk and looking out the window here, which of course you can't see because the camera's facing in, and all you can see is the messy interior of the office, including, including bowler wearing gorilla and Jimi Hendrix up there and Captain America and various bits of art. One of these days I'm going to figure out a good way, maybe with my phone or something, to take you around and show you some of the things that are on the wall in here, because there's some nice things just to share. But I might actually clean the office up a little bit first, because I'm fairly calm and fairly accepting of what a god-awful mess we've been living in since the pandemic's begun, and to be honest, for about 30 years before that. But I am going to still do some kind of tidying up before I walk you around the room. So it's horrifying. Anyway, I'm assuming I'm not wearing an earphone tonight. I've decided I can do this without having to worry about the mic, but let me know if there's any problem with the mic or the sound or anything like that. What is there to talk about? Not a huge amount, as I mentioned last night or early this morning to the folks in that group. Just things, just stuff. I'm working on Navigator's Children, interleafing new ideas with the old ideas and writing new scenes and all of that, which is actually going to be good for the book long term, in the sense it'll make it a better work. On the other hand, let me just tilt this a little bit. On the other hand, it may also slow the process down a little bit. I don't know. It's all complicated. It's always a very difficult thing as a writer to be able to say, that's it, I'm done with the book. And in fact, most of us, at least, well, I can't say that. Speaking for myself, I will say that I pretty much always have to just hit a point where I'm at deadline and I say, okay, that's it. Because it's a bit like fractals. It's a bit like the coastline paradox. I don't know if any of you know what the coastline paradox is. The coastline paradox is that there is no way to know exactly how long a coastline is, because coastlines of countries in the real world have this fractal quality where the more closely you measure, the longer it gets. And this is literally true. They're the same coastline that could be 6,000 miles when measured one way. If you measure it more accurately or more closely still, with more ins and outs and bumps and back and forths, which is in a sense a more accurate measurement, all of a sudden that 5,000 mile coastline becomes a 17,000 mile coastline. In the same sense, if you can follow this rather strange Tad logic, in the same sense, a book is never finished. A book, or in fact any work of art, I guess, is never really finished in the sense that, for me anyway, that I have done everything I could possibly do. I can always go back to it, and because of the changing nature of reality and consciousness and memory and everything, you can keep having new ideas. You know, you can look at a sentence that looked okay 2 days ago and go, yeah, it could be better, and I'll change it around. And in that sense, the like the coastline measurements, the changes may get smaller and smaller and smaller in most cases, but you're still making changes. And oftentimes it feels like you could make changes forever as your mood shifts and as your design shifts slightly. You know, you can keep finding things that go, well, if I fix that a little bit, it would make the other part that comes after it better, and blah, blah, blah. So in that sense, you know, that I'm never finished with a book. I just run out of time. And as I said, I'm sure this is true for a lot of other people with a lot of other things, certainly in the arts. You know, in the case of classic rock and roll records, you know, some people have spent months on a record, making a record, producing a record. Other times, back in the older days when the bands didn't have much control, you know, even the powerful ones like the Beatles, they would only have a certain amount of hours to be in the studio and would have to finish things up. So, excuse me. So that's the dilemma that I'm always dealing with, is I can always fix things. And then I've had with these books, with Navigator's Children, the last volume, I've had, of course, this long stretch of various other things happening. The sort of go slow thing going on in the publishing industry because of COVID, and me, because of splitting the book into half of it, I went into termination mode or finishing mode with the first half of the last volume. And then I also, because of that, I also stopped and wrote Brothers of the Wind, which originally I had decided to have afterward, and stuff like that. So all of these things have conspired that as I've been sitting around thinking, working on other things, of course, this being uppermost in my mind as my main project, I kept coming up with new things that I wanted to do that I thought would work better or would make a point more clearly, or whatever the case may be. So now I'm in the process of the rubber meeting the road on all that stuff. And I have not only all these notes and things all over my various outlines, but I have even more of them in my head, because most of it goes on in my head. So almost every plot line has got these little phantoms hanging off of it in my cerebral cortex, saying, if that's where that kind of stuff gets stored, saying, but you could go this way or you could go that way. And last time you were thinking about it, Tad, you were thinking about taking it in this direction, but maybe then also making a right turn and blah, blah, blah. So all of these things have these little tags on them of different possibilities. So anyway, as a result, it's an odd and interesting process that I'm in the middle of at the moment. It's one I haven't quite had to do before, which is interesting. You know, it's interesting to get into new territory. It always is. And as I said, I don't know anything for certain, but I am pretty sure that it's going to mean a better book in the long run. It's like the difference between a bad, fast Tetris run and a longer, slower Tetris run. You know, that on the one hand, the speed is less, but on the other hand, you're packing the things in better, and they're more efficient use of things, and you know, you all the way down the line, you're making things better. Or at least I feel like I am. Again, though, because books are never done, I may look back on it years later and go, well, no, the first idea was better. Like I said, they're never finished. It's one reason, among very many, that I don't read my own work afterwards unless I have to, because it's pointless with something you've already finished, because you're going to have, oh, I wish I'd seen that, or oh, I wish I'd known I was going to do that in the third volume. I could have gone back and made that bit better and would have hooked up with that third volume stuff later on. So anyway, so that's most of what I'm doing have been doing this week, plus all the normal stuff, which is, you know, life keeps throwing things at you. You get up in the morning about to run off and go do something, you know, a medical appointment or whatever, and, you know, the car battery is dead. And so that then becomes a day of medical appointments and getting a new car battery and hooking it up and stuff. And, you know, I've had a few days like that, not all car battery related, but I had a few days like that this week too. So it's always crazy. But other than that, we're all well. We're all doing okay. None of us has any diseases or viruses that we're aware of. Dogs and young people and Deb and I and Cat and Snake all seem to be in pretty decent shape. So, with that said, I'm going to check in and say hello to people, and then I'm going to start my reading for the evening. So, who have we got who has signed themselves in? Jared, there's Jared. Good evening, Jared. Good to see you. Medardo, hello, hello. Nice to see you. Jill, a pleasure. Yes, we have coincided. We have coincision? Coincidence, I guess. That's interesting. That's a word you don't normally see conjugated in that particular way. We coincide. We have coincision. I don't know. I'm going to have to look that one up. It's obviously not one you see a lot. Margaret, good evening. Nice to see you. Ray, greetings to you and to the tadpoles. Ooh, yes. Nice to see you anyway. Good to see you, Ray. I'm making that face because, as I talked about last week, I'm not too sure about tadpoles as a collective noun. Mostly because they're little wiggly gloppy things, and in the current books, they're actually represent the absolute nadir of what somebody has to eat. In the is it the second book, I think it's in can't remember, either in the first or the second book, one of the characters has to eat a bunch of tadpoles out of politeness, and raw live tadpoles. It was everybody knows how I feel about little wet, cold, slimy things, whether cooked or not. And that definitely comes out in that scene for that character. Anyway, who else is checked in? Claudia, hello, good to see you. Rose, hello. Barban, good evening, good evening. And Kristen, hello, happy Easter to you too. Oh yes, happy Easter to all of you who celebrate and all of you who don't too, I guess, you know. So, because like me, I'm not particularly an Easter celebrant, but hey, I'm all for a holiday. I'm all for a celebration of spring. And I wish all my celebrating friends a very happy Easter. Greg, good evening to you. Who else? Bad audio quality. I hope someone else will tell me, Kristen, if the audio quality is bad. That's why I said I'm not wearing a earbud tonight, so I'm just assuming it sounds like it did last time, but somebody can tell me. Deborah points out that I have just explained why my books have many pages. Yes, and I have explained at other times in the past why my books have so many characters, and that is because sometimes you plan to have a character do something, and by the time you get to that point in the plot, you've learned enough about the character to realize they'd never do that in a million years. And you've got to have some other characters standing around that you can suddenly draft into that position. Okay, so Claudia and Kristen are both having problems with sound. I'm sorry to hear it. I don't. Hang on. Okay, tell me if that's any better. I've just turned off the sound on my end. Maybe you were getting some kind of an echo or something. But anyway, so Kristen and Claudia, I believe it was. Yeah, let me know if that's now any better since I turned that sound off. Normally I have it off, so it's possible that there was a effect there. Tim writes a long post here. Will you be doing any tours in the Great White North as things become more normal? I certainly hope so. And yes, I somebody asked me on one of my social media pages if I would be touring again soon, and I said the main thing at the moment that is hanging me up is our daughter, who is still living at home, is particularly at risk for any kind of pulmonary or whatever illness. She's fine otherwise, and you know, I mean, I don't, but it is a real issue, and so we've been extra careful during the whole pandemic. She and her partner are going to move out in probably this summer sometime. So at that point, with her no longer living here day to day, I would be much more open. I will be much more open to going out and touring. Then there's the part two of the equation. Part two of the equation is I don't go out and tour on my own. I get sent by publishers. I'm in the process also of going through various complicated things on the publishing front. Nothing due to me, due to corporate mergers and stuff like that. So I don't know what will be going on with that. I don't fund my own promo tours or my own book signing tours. So that will have to wait to see what people are doing and whether somebody wants to send me out on tour. But if for some reason that doesn't seem to be happening in the near future, get in touch with me again, and we'll talk about at least getting you find some way to get you an autographed book. Okay, let me see. Okay, scratchy audio, scratchy, no, static, not echo. Static, scratchy audio, like a bad connection. Huh, okay, so I've had a few people talking about that. I have no idea. Here, let me plug this in and see if I get anything like that. Just by listening to my own thing, and then I'll start reading. I don't know of any reason why that should be true. And let me see. Okay, here's my okay. I'm not hearing anything on my end that sounds scratchy or odd. I really don't know why that should be, and if it is true, then I apologize. I really don't know what it is. Like a bad connection. Okay. Yeah, no, I don't have any reason offhand why that should be the case, and I apologize if it is. The Make sure I've got the right audio here. Yes, audio is on. Um, can't do noise suppression on this, so I don't know. If so, if that's the case, all I can do is say sorry. I don't know what it is from this end. And let me think about something here. Might work. Okay. I'm a little worried about that. I don't want to pull anything out, disconnect anything in the midst of all of this, because I might not get it back. So I'm just going to go ahead and read. I apologize if it is scratchy. Let me move that a little more centrally and see how it works. Okay, so I will just tell you what is going on in Otherland City of Golden Shadow, which is that Christabel, we just had a long segment, first of Orlando, who has revealed to Fredericks, his friend who he's never met in person and who has turned out to be female, against Orlando's expectations. Fredericks has just found out from Orlando that Orlando has progeria, which is a disease of premature aging, that he's not expected to live very long, and all of the things that we've seen now about Orlando and his obsession with death and things like that are become a bit clearer. Then we had a whole section in which little Christabel, little 7-year-old Christabel, helped Mr. Sellers to escape his house and arrange a scene that would cover his tracks of him disappearing, and he's actually gone down into some disused tunnels underneath the army base. And Christabel almost got caught, but just barely managed to get back in time to make it seem like she was home when everything went kabam. So that's what was just happening, and now we're changing characters again because Orlando has been contacted by the Wicked Tribe. Orlando is still trying to get back into Treehouse to follow the Golden City, and so he has just finished his conversation with Fredericks and is now having his meeting, or having a meeting with the Wicked Tribe. And again, I apologize to those of you just tuning in if there's a sound issue. I don't have any way to figure out what it is on this end. I can just try to make sure all the connections are good. I may be asking too much of these various bits and pieces. Actually, let me try something. Don't go away. Are we there? Are we there? Hello, test, test. Okay. People, let me know if that's any better. Uh, I just changed some plugs around. So do me a favor, drop me a comment. Let me know if you can still hear me. That's important. If you can still hear me. And also, if you can hear any difference in the sound quality. So please let me know, actually. Anybody? Much better, much better. Okay. Good. I suspect that what that is again, that was just too many hubs. I've got a bunch of hubs on the desk. Okay, so now I've learned, and we will adjust that for next time. Anyway, so back to the reading. Hey, Lando Garner, you got Swordhead House, Zuni commented. Tiny yellow monkeys were busily rearranging the decor of Orlando's cot. Two of them were adding an exaggerated handlebar mustache to the severed head of the black elf prince, and half a dozen others seemed to have changed the body of the worm of Morson Keep into a transparent chute. As Orlando watched, one little banana-colored simian was sliding on its belly through the innards of Thargor's prize beast. Swordhead? Oh, yeah, I used to spend a lot of time in the middle country. You know that? Boring, pronounced Zuni. Kill monster, find jewel, earn bonus points. Wibble, wobble, wobble. Orlando couldn't really argue. He turned to watch another pair of monkeys altering the historical pictures of the Karakoram tapestry into a procession of cartoon snails having sex. He scowled. It wasn't so much the exuberant vandalism that bothered him. He had gotten pretty sick of the old decor, as the seemingly effortless way the wicked tribe had penetrated his protected programming. It would have taken a team of engineers from some place like Indigo a whole afternoon to manage what these little lunatics had done in minutes. He suddenly understood how his parents must have felt when he tried to explain the things he did on the net. Beazle appeared from a hole in the ceiling and was instantly swarmed by mini apes. If you don't get these things off of me, the agent warned, I'm gonna dress them. Be my guest? I'd like to see you manage it. Beazle knotted his legs tight to protect them from marauding monkeys. Fredericks is requesting permission to enter. Orlando felt something grow warmer inside him. Yeah, sure. Let him in. He would have to get this straightened out in his mind, it seemed. So, if Fredericks wanted to be treated like a guy, then she was a guy. Just like old times. Sort of. Fredericks popped in and was immediately set upon by flying yellow creatures. As he waved his hands reflexively to clear his field of vision, he could have made them transparent if he had thought about it, since he knew the capacities of Orlando's cot almost as well as its creator did. Orlando looked him over. Frederick Sim seemed a little less spectacularly muscle-bound than usual. Maybe, after hearing about Orlando's disease, he thought that looking so healthy might be offensive. Los monos volandos, shouted one of the tribe, buzzing Frederick's face. We Supremo Big Daddy Culture Club. Happy flappy trails. Jesus, Orlando, this is fun, grumped Fredericks as he flicked away a tiny ape who had been swinging from his simulated earlobe. I'm utterly glad I didn't miss this. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't miss it too. A moment of awkward silence. Silence, except for the chattering and aimless noise-making of the tribe, ended when Orlando clapped his hands. The yellow clouds split apart into simian particles which settled down on various virtual surfaces. I wanted to ask you guys for a favor. He tried to look like the kind of person a flock of feral children should want to help. I need help, really badly. You cred us? Squealed some of the monkeys. Spree by? Toys and gear? But Caspar, Orlando was beginning to recognize a few of their voices, shushed them. What favor you need? I'm trying to find somebody. The name is Melchior, and it's something to do with Treehouse. He or she or Maybe it's more than one person did some software work, some gear, for a red griffin in the middle country sim world. Melchior, said Zuni, rising to hover in the air like a particularly homely little fairy. Easy! Dog! 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 And doggy friends, said another monkey. Wait a minute. What do you mean? This is like talking to breakfast cereal, said Fredericks. Give it up, Orlando. Hang on. Zuni, is dog a person? The tiny ape spun. No, not person. Old. Million years. Caspar shushed some of the younger tribesfolk again. He is old person. We call him dog. He lives in Cobweb Corner. Older than rocks, shouted one of the monkeys. Older than Uncle Jingle, giggled another. Oh, old. Tortuously, Orlando managed to glean the information that some person called something like Blue Dog and Crite, or just Dog, kept an Elcott in Founders Hill at Treehouse, and along with some other people had once created gear under the name of Melchior. Made blast up button, Zuni remembered with pleasure. Put it on someone's head, push it, boom! Orlando hoped she was talking about something that happened to Sims, not real people. Can you get us back into Treehouse so we can talk to him? Woof, said Zuni. Even better. You view he view you. We get him right now, Caspar explained. Dog, he love wicked tribe. Always he say, just what I need when we visit him for fun games. The monkeys rose in a sudden yellow cyclone, spun so rapidly they seemed to smear like melting butter, then disappeared. Orlando sat appreciating the silence. His head was beginning to throb, a slight feverish ache. Fredericks rose and glided to the vandalized pyramid of trophies, stopping in front of the black elf prince. Dieter Cabo would love this. Don't blame me, blame the Tarzan Memorial Art Appreciation Society. Fredericks glided back. So you think these micro-scannies are going to help you find something you see in your dreams? Orlando, do you ever listen to yourself anymore? I'll follow whatever lead I can get. Yeah, I noticed. His friend hesitated. How are you feeling? Don't start. I shouldn't have told you anything. Frederick sighed, but before he could say anything else, one of the cot walls went permeable, and a blizzard of monkeys blew through it. Come on! One shouted. Come now, fast, fast, fast! What is it? Orlando couldn't make any sense out of the tribal din. What? Found dog. Zuni's voice purred in his ear. She was hovering just above his left shoulder. He having big secret. Strong line, throughput plus, all kinds of colors. Come along. Dog is doing something, elaborated Caspar in his other ear. Something he is trying to hide. Big secret, but no one fools the wicked tribe. Orlando could not help thinking of a cartoon he had once seen. A man with a devil hovering on one shoulder and an angel on the other, each trying to sway him to its own ends. But what if you only had voices of uncontrolled anarchy in both ears? What are you talking about? What kind of secret? Throughput? Big hole to somewhere. Come, we hook you up. Zuni was buzzing in his ear like a bumblebee. We surprise dog. Laugh and shriek. Laugh and shriek. Wicked tribe, mejor net riding crew, shouted another. Kilohana, fasten belts. Slow down. Orlando winced. The fever headache had suddenly gotten fierce, and he did not want to be rushed. But it was too late for any chance of consultation. The monkeys were in full speed ahead mode. Fredericks wavered and disappeared, sucked away to only the wicked tribe knew where. The entire cot began to swirl like several colors of paint poured down the drain. Damn it! Wait a minute! Orlando shouted, but he was shouting into emptiness, and a hiss like an empty signal as they took him, too. Darkness washed over him. He was flying, being pulled apart in several directions. The crackling in his ears grew louder until it roared like the jets of an interplanetary rocket. "Hang on, Lando Gardner!" Suni shouted happily above the noise, somewhere in the darkness. She sounded completely undisturbed. Was this unsettling experience his alone, or were these mad children simply used to it? The sensation of being pulled grew stronger, as though he were being stretched thin and sucked through a straw. It was like being in some roller coastering simulation, but surely they must be between simulations. Orlando could hardly think. He seemed to be going faster, ever faster. Then the universe collapsed. Everything stopped, as though something had seized him with a giant hand. He heard distant shrieks, the thin voices of children, but not happy now. Faintly, as though from behind a thick door, those children were screeching in terror. Something had them, and it had Orlando too. The void began to tighten around him, a squeezing fist of nothingness that froze his thoughts and heart. He was helpless, suspended in an arc of slow electricity. The part of him that could still think struggled, but could not free itself. The darkness had weight, and it was crushing him. He could feel himself flattened, pressed, until his last remaining piece of self fluttered helplessly and ever more slowly, like a bird caught beneath a thick blanket. "I don't want to die." It was a meaningless thought, because there was nothing he could think or do to change what was happening, but it echoed over and over through a mind that was running down. All the death trip simulations in the world could not have prepared him for this. "I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Don't want." Astonishingly, the darkness was not infinite. A tiny spark drew him up out of the unspeakable emptiness. He rose toward it helplessly and without volition, as though he were a corpse being dragged from the depths of a river. The spark became a blur of light. After the killing blackness, it seemed an impossible gift. As he floated closer, the light grew, shooting out at all angles, scratching bright marks on the endless slate of night. Lines became a square. The square gained depth and was a cube, which then became something so mundane that for a moment he could not believe it. Floating in the void, becoming larger every moment, was an office. A simple room with desk and chairs. Whether he rose to it or it descended to him, he could not tell, but it spread and surrounded him, and he felt the freezing numbness inside him shift and loosen a little. This is a dream. I'm having a dream. He was certain. He had fallen asleep wearing his jacket before and knew the sensation. It's the pneumonia. Must be. A fever dream. But why can't I wake up? The room was something like a medical examining room, but everything in it was made of gray concrete. The vast desk looked like a stone sarcophagus, something from a tomb. Behind the desk sat a man, or at least Orlando thought it was a man. Where the face should be hung a radiant emptiness. "I'm dreaming, aren't I?" he asked. The being behind the desk did not seem to hear the question. "Why is it you wish to come and work for us?" The voice was high but soothing. Never in a million years could he have anticipated such a conversation. "I don't want to work for anyone. I mean, I'm just a kid." A door in the wall behind the desk slowly swung open, revealing swirling, smoky blue light. Something moved inside this brilliance, a shadow with no discernible shape that nevertheless filled Orlando with horror. He wants you," said the shining personage. "He'll take anyone. He's bored, you see. But on our side, we have slightly higher standards. Our margin is very slim. Nothing personal. I can't have a job yet. I'm still in school. See? This was a dream. It had to be. Or maybe it was something worse. Maybe he was dying, and his mind had cobbled together this last fantasy." The thing in the room beyond moved, making the light waver. Orlando could hear it breathing, the deep, ragged inhalations coming a long time apart. It was waiting. It would wait as long as necessary. "Well, then, I suppose you might as well step through." The figure behind the desk gestured toward the open door and the terrible something beyond. "If you don't want the job, you shouldn't have wasted our precious office hours. Things are busy just now, what with the expansion and the merger." The hoarse breathing became louder. Orlando knew that he did not ever want to see what made that noise. "I've changed my mind," he said. I'm sorry. I want the job. Is it something to do with mathematics?" He knew he had good scores. Wasn't that what grown-ups wanted? Good scores? He would have to ask his mother and father for permission to leave school, but when he told them about the thing in the other room, surely they would. The shining person stood. Was that rejection in the set of shoulders, in the cold white fire of the faceless face? Had he argued too long? "Come and give me your hand," it said. Without knowing how it happened, he was standing before the desk. The figure there put out a hand which burned like phosphorus, but without heat. At the same time, he could feel the cold air billowing out from the blue-lit room, air that made his skin shrink and his eyes water. Orlando reached out. "You must remember to do your best." As the figure enveloped his hand with its own, he felt warmth flooding back into him so swiftly that it was almost painful. "Your scores were good. We'll take a chance." "Don't forget Fredericks," he said, suddenly remembering. I made him come. It's not his fault." The thing in the room beyond made a horrid noise, part bark, part wet sob. Its shadow moved forward, darkening the doorway and quenching the cube of light that was the office, blotting out even the brilliance of the thing that held Orlando's hand. He shouted in terror and stepped back, and then he was falling again. Falling. The setting sun, as it passed behind the haze that shrouded Calcutta, seemed to kindle the entire sky. An orange glow spread along the horizon, molten light against which the factory smokestacks stood in charcoal silhouette, like the minarets of hell. "It has begun," he thought. "Even the sky is reflected. The dance has begun." The holy man bent and lifted his single possession from the sand, then walked slowly down to the river to wash it clean. He was finished with it now, this last tie to the illusory world of Maya. But there were rituals to be observed. He must finish properly as he had begun. He squatted in the brown river, a delta finger of the mighty Ganges, and felt its sacred waters wash over him, thick with the effluvia of Calcutta's industrial and human waste. His skin itched and burned, but he did not hurry. He filled the bowl and then poured the water out again, rubbing and scraping with his long fingers in all the crannies until the bowl gleamed in the dying sunlight. He held it up before him with the teeth resting on his palm, and remembered the day he had come here to ready himself, a full 2 years before. No one had troubled him, as he picked through the ashes of the cremation ground. Even in the modern Indian Federation, where pulsingly new electronic nerves ran through the flesh of a nation as old and withered as humankind itself, there was still a superstitious respect for the Aghori, the cremation sites to which he and a few other devotees of Shiva, the destroyer, still came as pilgrims, sinking themselves in filth and carrion in the search for purity, were ceded to them the most untouchable of untouchables. Those who believed welcomed evidence that the old ways were not completely gone. Others who had once believed turned away with a guilty shudder. And those who did not believe at all had better things to do than worry what might go on in the festering bone piles beside the great filthy river. On that day 2 years ago, when he had shed his city clothes as easily and completely as a snake sloughs its skin, he had carefully inspected every pile of human bones. Later, he would return to them in search of unconsumed flesh, for the servants of Shiva eat carrion as well as live with it. But on this first day, he had been searching for something more durable. He had found it at last, complete but for a jawbone, sitting on the scorched remains of a rib cage. For an idle moment, he had wondered upon what scenes the empty eye sockets had once looked, what tears they had shed, what thoughts, hopes, dreams had lived in the now hollow brain case. Then he had reminded himself of the first lesson of the cremation ground. Everything comes to this, but this, too, is illusion. Just as the death represented by the nameless skull was all death, so also was it no death, merely an illusion of the material world. His mind refocused, he had taken the skull down to the riverside. As the sun, like this day's sun, had sunk down to disappear at last into the western haze, a torch doused in a basin of muddy water, he had found a sharp stone and begun to work. He had first placed the point of the stone in the middle of the forehead, in the place where a living man placed a pundara mark, then scored the bone all the way around the skull's circumference, across frontal, temporal, occipital, words from his previous life that he now discarded as easily as he had put off his clothes. The circle delineated, he had taken the sharp edge of the stone, which was nevertheless not very sharp, and begun to saw. For all his patience, he had spent that first night without a fire, in shivering nakedness so as not to lose concentration. It had not been a simple task. Others of his kind, he knew, chose a skull which had already been weakened by fire, or which in some cases had already broken open. But with some thought of the ultimate rigors before him, he had not allowed himself such luxury. Thus, it was not until the sun had reappeared in the east and turned the river to rosy copper that he lifted the top of the skull free and tossed it aside. He had taken the rest of the skull down to the river then, his first time touching the holy waters since his arrival. Although he had been feeling a thirst like fire in his throat for hours, it was not until he had sanded down the edges of the hollow on a flat rock that he allowed himself to dip it into the river and drink. As Mother Ganga's polluted waters passed down his throat, replacing the thirst with another kind of fire, he had felt a great clarity transfix him. Lord Shiva, he had thought, I reject the coils of Maya. I await your music. Now, as he stared at the bowl for the last time, the Aghori began to speak. His voice, unused for months, was dry and faint, but he was not talking for anyone's benefit but his own. It came to Lord Shiva's ears that there were living in the forest of Taragam 10,000 heretical priests. These heretics taught that the universe is eternal, that souls have no lord, and that the performance of works alone is sufficient for salvation. Shiva determined to go among them and teach them the error of their ways. To Lord Vishnu, the preserver, he said, "Come, you will accompany me. I will put upon myself the seeming of a wandering yogi, and you will put upon yourself the appearance of the yogi's beautiful wife, and we will confound these heretical rishis." So he and Vishnu disguised themselves and went among the priests in the forests of Taragam. All the wives of the priests found themselves with painful longing for the powerful yogi who came to them, and all the rishis themselves were full of longing for the yogi's wife. All the business of that place was disrupted, and there was great unrest among the priesthood. At last they decided to set a curse upon the yogi and his wife, but all of their cursings were to no effect. So the priests prepared a sacrificial fire, and from it summoned a dreadful tiger, which rushed upon Lord Shiva to destroy him. But Shiva only smiled a tender smile, then pulled the skin from the tiger using only his little finger, and wrapped that skin about himself for a shawl. The furious rishis next evoked a terrible serpent, vast and poisonous. But Shiva smiled again and snatched it up, then hung it about his neck for a garland. The priests could not believe their eyes. Lastly, the priest brought forth a hideous black dwarf with a club that could shatter mountains. But Shiva only laughed and set his foot upon the dwarf's back, and then began to dance. Shiva's dance is the source of all movement within the universe, and the vision of it, and the splendor of heaven's opening filled the hearts of the heretical priests with awe and terror. They cast themselves down before him, crying for mercy. He danced for them his 5 acts: creation, preservation, destruction, embodiment, and release. And when they had seen Lord Shiva's dance, the priests were freed from illusion and became his devotees, and error was forever burned from their souls. Thus it is that as the first cause, sometimes called the terror and the destroyer, dances upon darkness, he contains in himself both the life and death of all things. So, for this reason, his servants dwell in the cremation ground, and the heart of his servant is like the cremation ground, wasted and desolate, where the self and its thoughts and deeds are burned away, and nothing remains but the dancer himself. When he had finished speaking, he bent his head and shut his eyes. After a few moments, he set his bowl down upon the sandy soil, then lifted a heavy stone and broke the bowl to pieces. The sun had disappeared, leaving only a bloody ribbon of light stretched on the horizon behind the city. The Aghori stood up and walked through the ashes and smoke to the place among the reeds where he had left his briefcase 24 months earlier, protected by a plastic bag nestled in a pile of rocks. He took it from the bag and placed his thumb against the lock, then opened it. The scent that rose from the case, to senses now used only to the smell of the charnel house, was that of another life, one that seemed impossibly different. For a moment he allowed his roughened fingers to indulge themselves against the almost unbelievable softness of the clothing that had awaited him there all this time, and marveled that he had once thoughtlessly worn such things. Then he lifted the silky bundle and took from beneath it a pad in an expensive leather case. He flipped open the lid and ran a finger across the touch screen. It glowed into life, its spark chip still charged. He uncapped his Nero cannula and swabbed it with alcohol from the briefcase pocket. There were some things for which even the sacred water of Mother Ganga was not entirely suitable, then unspooled a fiber link from the side of the pad and plugged it in. 10 minutes later, Nandi Paradivash unplugged the fiber link and stood up. As he had anticipated, the message had been waiting. It was time for him to move on. He pulled on the pants and shirt, helplessly conscious of their soft feel against his skin, then sat down on a rock to don his shoes. The cremation ground had prepared him, but for the next part of his journey he must return to the city. What he needed to do next would require access to serious bandwidth. The Grail Brotherhood have taken up their instruments, and now we of the Circle take up ours. Others have been drawn to the music too, as we guessed they would, and only Lord Shiva knows how it will end. He closed the briefcase, then made his way up the sandy bank. It was evening now, and the lights of the city glimmered before him like a jeweled necklace upon the dark breast of Parvati, the destroyer's wife. It has begun, he told himself. The dance has begun. And let's see. Okay. That was... Oh, right. I don't have that anymore, do I? Hello, I'm still here. Okay. Okay, so now we are starting the fourth part. This is called, it just says fourth, the city. And he answered and said, Babylon is fallen, and all the graven images of her gods he hath broken unto the ground. Isaiah 21:9. Chapter 33, Someone Else's Dream. Netfeed, Sitcom Live. Come to buy some Spruity. Visual, Weng Weng Cho's dining room. Cho. What is this? I thought someone went to get Spruity. This is a very important meal. The regional governor is coming. You have all betrayed me. Visual, Cho exits. Daughter, Zia, shoves Chen Shuo. Zia. You are going to give my father a heart attack, Shuo. Shuo. I hear that Spruity is a good cure for that too. Audio over. Laughter. Zia. He really believes there is such a thing. You are a very cruel man. Shuo. Is that why you love me? Or is it just because I am so beautiful? Audio over. Laughter and applause. For a long time she lay on her back, staring up at the feverish green of the trees and the random multicolored bits of flame that she at last identified as butterflies. Where she could see it through the puzzle of leaves, the sky was awesomely deep and blue, but she could not remember who she was, or where she was, or why she should be lying on her back so empty of knowledge. At last, as she idly watched a green bird making urgent little hooting noises on a green branch above her, a memory drifted up. There had been a shadow, a cold hand upon her. Darkness, terrible darkness. Despite the moist warmth of the air and the strength of the sun beyond the filter of leaves, she shivered. I have lost someone, she thought suddenly. She could feel the space where that person should be. Someone dear to me is gone. An incomplete picture flitted through her thoughts. A small body, slender, a brown-skinned face with bright eyes. Brother? She wondered. Son? Friend or lover? She knew all the words, but could not say exactly what any of them meant. She sat up. The wind in the trees made a long sighing noise, an exhalation that surrounded her, as the trees themselves did, on all sides. What was this place? Then, tickling her thoughts like a cough gathering in a throat, she began to hear a word. It was only a sound at first, but in her thoughts she could hear a woman's voice saying it. A sharp sound, a sound meant to get her attention. Irene! 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 It was her mother's voice, playing back from her memory like an old recording. Irene, put that down now. Girl, you tire me out sometimes. Irene? Irene, Sulaweo. Yes, Rini, I'm talking to you. Rini. And with her name, everything else came flooding back as well. Her father's angry scowl and Stephen's sweet face gone slack in endless sleep. Pinetown, the wreckage of Dr. Van Beek's laboratory, and then the dark thing, the terrible blackness, and old Singh shrieking without any sound. Kabu! Kabu! There was no answer but the hooting green bird. She raised her voice and tried again, then remembered Martine and called her too. But that's foolishness. She wouldn't be here with me. She's in France, wherever. And this was clearly not France, and not the military base beneath the mountain. This was someplace else. Where in God's name am I? Kabu! Kabu, can you hear me? The vibrant jungle swallowed her voice. It died almost without echo. Rini stood on shaky legs. The experiment had clearly failed in some terrible way, but how had it resulted in this? Her surroundings were nothing like the arid Drakensberg Mountains. This looked like someplace in the north, like one of the rainforests in the West African Federation. A thought, an impossible thought, kindled in her mind. It couldn't be. She reached up to touch her face. Something was there, something invisible, that nevertheless had form and texture beneath her probing fingers. Something that even covered her eyes, although the green world before her demonstrated that nothing could be impeding her vision, unless none of this was real. Rini grew dizzy. She sank slowly to her knees, then sat down. There was thick, soft soil beneath her, hot and alive with its own cycle of life. She could feel it. She could feel the serrated edge of a fallen leaf against the edge of her hand. The thought was impossible, but so was this place. The world around her was too real. She closed her eyes and opened them. The jungle would not go away. Overwhelmed, she began to weep. It's impossible. She had been walking for half an hour, struggling through thick vegetation. This quality of detail, and it goes on for miles, and there's no latency at all. It just can't be. An insect hummed past. Rini threw out her hand and felt the tiny body smack against her knuckle and bounce off. A moment later, the bright, winged thing had struggled back into flight and was zigzagging away. No discernible latency, even at this level of complexity. What did Singh say? Trillions upon trillions of instructions per second? I've never heard of anything like this. Suddenly she realized why the Golden City had looked the way it did. At this level of technology, almost anything was possible. Kabu! She shouted again. Martine! Hello! Then a little more quietly. Jeremiah! Is the line still working? Can you hear me? Jeremiah! Nobody answered her except birds. So, now what? If she was indeed in the network called Otherland, and if it was as big as Singh had said, she might be as horrendously far from anything useful as someone at the Antarctic would be from an Egyptian coffeehouse. Where had Singh meant to start? The weight of hopelessness threatened for a moment to immobilize her completely. She considered just dropping offline, but rejected the thought after only short consideration. Singh had died in that darkness. which was as much thought as she dared to give to what had happened. To get them here. It would be a terrible betrayal to do anything but go on. But go on where? She ran through a quick set of exploratory commands without result. None of the standard VR control languages seemed to be in operation, or else there were permissions necessary for users to manipulate the environment that she simply didn't have. Someone spent an unimaginable amount of time and money to build themselves a world. Maybe they like playing God. Maybe no one else gets to do anything but visit this place and take what they get. Rini looked up. The tree shadows had taken on a new angle, and the sky seemed just perceptibly darker. Everything else is just like RL, she thought. So maybe I better start thinking about a fire. Who knows what's going to be walking around here at night? The impossibility of her situation once more threatened to overcome her, but beneath the shock and confusion and despair, there was also a tiny trace of sour humor. Who would ever have guessed that her precious, hard-earned college education, the thing that everyone had said would make her an integral part of the 21st century, would instead have led to her building imaginary fires in imaginary jungles to keep imaginary beasts at bay. Congratulations, Rini. You are now an official imaginary primitive. And that's where we're going to stop. So I hope we got the sound and other stuff fixed. I know, excuse me for having to mess about with things as usual. I'm trying to figure out when things don't work exactly right. But that is where we're going to stop for tonight and for the week. And I will be returning, as far as I know. Everything seems to be on schedule for a normal reading next Sunday. First at the 1 a.m. my time reading, and then now at this slot, the 7 p.m. my time reading. And I thank you for your patience when there are occasional technical glitches, and I thank you for your company, which is always why I'm here. Because frankly, I could be, if I was really the world's most boring person, I suppose I could be reading my books to myself. But even I'm not that boring. So with that said, I thank you all. I will see you next week. I want you to take good care of yourselves and good care of your loved ones and the people around you. And I will see you very soon, I hope. So thank you again for joining me. Peace. Be well. Ciao.